Hello, today we will be doing something slightly different. If you have seen my videos before, you may know me for making retro PC inspired 3D dinosaur models. And half of that I will be doing today too. However, instead of making a dinosaur, this time I will create a dragon. This, as compared to my dinosaurs, will require some change to my model making process. Less science, more artistic control. So, today I'll be going a lot more into my actual artistic creature design process, rather than the science behind it. Starting off with a plan of what I want to do. Considering that this is the first complex dragon I am actually modeling, I really don't want to go overboard. So, no hexapodal dragon then, but a simple one with 2 legs and 2 wings. Considering the low poly style I use, it is also best not to add too many details to the model, as it would otherwise look a bit out of place. I eventually settled on a very classic fairy tale dragon. As for references, I mainly used classics such as Maleficent's dragon, the Wyvern from the Black Cauldron, Lord of the Rings' Fell Beast, though, mind you, mainly the ones from before the live-action movie, and Dragon Slayer's Vermithrax, personal favorite of mine, as well as a variety of different toys, statues, paintings, and the like. Looking at them, a lot of trends emerged. Big, arching brow horns, beaks or somewhat tapered snouts, relatively simple wing structures, and a distinct color divide between the back and the belly, mainly via snake-like scoots. All of those I also want to incorporate into my design. With that plan figured out and the references gathered, let's get to modeling. So, I sadly don't have any work in progress shots of the base model, since I only started considering making a video out of this well into the texturing process. With that being said, here he is. I wanted to go for a very powerful yet aerodynamic look, using a lot of long swept-back shapes on the head and wings, paired with a large keeled chest like the one of a bird. On the head you can see the Maleficent influence coming in with the curving devil horns and sharp tapered skull. The eye area is specifically inspired by Vermithrax. I just really like those big scales and the evil squint look they give the eyes. The legs are pretty usual theropod ones. Digitigrade, 3 main toes, no hallux though. Nothing really special about them. The wings, however, are very special, at least for my models. So far, all the wings I have modeled were those of birds or pterosaurs. Rather simple, with 1 arm, a hand, and no or just 1 wing finger. The dragon, however, has 4 wing fingers. Doesn't sound all too cool, after all it's just the same finger but 4 times. However, this does mean that rigging this guy is going to be a lot more difficult, as I do not want to move every single bone individually. I'll spare you the details of UV mapping and we'll get directly into texturing. One thing I have noticed is that a bunch of these old school dragons are either black or somewhat greyish in color, so I decided to replicate that here. Add in bright blue belly scales and wing edges to give some color contrast, and the base colors are done. Next up, scales and details. Oh, so many scales and details. I draw all my animal textures by hand, so each and every scale is individually drawn. Depending on what kind of person you are, that may either sound very meditative or incredibly boring. I personally think it's quite a soothing process. During this step I also define the muscle shapes, add extra details and folds, and decide wherever the light is supposed to hit and where it's not. Now for the challenging part, rigging. The base rig is nothing special when compared to my usual subjects. A detached hip bone, tail and torso coming off of that, attached head, a jawbone, and pretty regular limb bones, looking pretty much exactly like what you'd imagine they'd look like. The problem comes, as I've already hinted at earlier, in the wings. 2 bones per wing fingers, that times 4. A nightmare to weight paint on a low poly model with so little vertices, and wholly new to me for rigging. Instead of just the usual IKs, I also put an extra target constraint on the outer wing bones and the hand IK bone, the big red cube there. This makes it so that when I turn the hand control, it also curls the fingers. Very useful for animation and general posing. Despite how easy it was for me to explain this, setting this up and properly weight painting the wings took a good 90 minutes or so. Besides wings, I have also added the copy rotation to the head and the limbs. Using this, I can rotate the foot, hand, or head with the same control I use to move the limb. Pretty nifty in my opinion. With that and some additional edits to the texture, like adding some nice little wing spots, this makes our finished dragon. As a bonus, I want to talk a tiny bit about some of the renders and test animations I've made for this guy. To make the renders properly crunchy and old school looking, I'd recommend to use a small render quality, in my case 1000 by 800 pixels, and to make your rendering engine as low quality as possible. I will link a video that goes much more in depth on the topic in the description if you're interested in that sort of thing. Besides that, using only minimal light sources, harsh lighting, and such nostalgic staples as bright blue skies, checkerboard floors, and random primitives thrown in just make them feel right. Now for the animations. I'm still an absolute bloody novice when it comes to animating, so I am not going to give any major advice on it. However, what I can do is show you what I got. The first animation is actually the last one I made. As you could probably tell, this is heavily inspired by the preening behavior of birds. Object interactions, like what you can see here, are still a bit of an issue for me, so you may see some clipping here and there. That does kind of add to the old school vibe of it a little, so maybe it works like this? Please tell me in the comments. The second animation is a roar. I tried to make this one a bit more dynamic and alive feeling, adding some details like a little step, shifting weight, and a small head wiggle. I'm even slowly getting more control over how the tail moves. You can still see some clipping into the ground here, but now the tail moves at a much more reasonable pace. I've also applied these new controls to my Morrison uncovered animals, so expect nicer tail motion from them too next time. This one was really fun to make. Not so the next animation, really. Flight cycles. Yeah, I've already struggled with the last flight animation I did for Mesodactylus, but this one was even more of a pain because of the new rig. It took me over 2.5 hours to animate this, as opposed to the roughly 45 minutes for each of the other two. With that being said, I am much happier with this than I am with my earlier flight cycles. The curling of the wings as well as the extra motion in the legs and neck just add a certain sense of weight to it. Of course it is still pretty choppy and wonky, but I'm working on improving these aspects as well. Only practice makes perfect. This brings me to the end of this short rundown. Modeling, texturing, rigging and animating takes time and experience, but it is doable. Even if you don't have Blender or another software, a simple camera, wires and clay may even do the trick. If you're interested in getting into 3D art, I can only encourage you. While I've had practice in art and anatomy beforehand, I've only started making 3D art January 2025. With all of my progress having been done since then, you can achieve this too. Just take your time and practice. Should you have enjoyed this breakdown and would like to see more, I have several more videos just like this, and many others on my channel. I am only just starting out with YouTube, and any support from likes, comments and subscriptions would mean the world to me. That should be all then. Goodbye, and please, have a nice rest of your day.